Prince William, who is going to be a great, a wonderful monarch for this country, and he's going to be a tremendous head of the Commonwealth, maybe in many years from now. He has said there is no racism in the royal family. Is he right? I think so. If there was racism in the family, then then there can't be a marriage with Prince Harry's marriage could not have gone ahead. They could have found one excuse or the other. They could have said, divorce, or they could have said something. Come on. So there is no racialism in the royal family. If there was, it would have come out precisely on the Meghan Markle issue. They could have simply said, for some unknown, for some confidential reason, this foreigner, for a reason that we cannot give because of confidentiality and, XYZ, can't be a member of the royal family. Prince Harry can renounce his nationality and can go there and marry who he likes. So that's racism. And what can you say against it? Nothing. The fact is that Princess Diana was a British citizen, Sarah Ferguson, British citizen. You have to, the fact is that prior to the First World War, the royal family would take brides from Europe, from some of the smaller courts, because Britain was powerful, and but after during the course of the First World War, it became obvious that this was a dangerous road. For example, the Mountbatten family. The father of Viceroy Mountbatten, he was due to hold a high position in the Admiralty, or to take over. But you see, he's German, so he couldn't. So this problem of conflicting loyalties that raised its ugly head. But much more important was the fact that the Tsar, Nicholas II, that he was killed. He and his family were killed. And in fact, he looked very, very much like his cousin, the British king. And the British king had said, we don't want that guy over here. Because if he's over here, then the Reds, the communists in Britain itself, they'd make the equation. They'd say that the king, emperor, and the Tsar are sisters under the skin. They're very similar. And, so the fact is that the Queen Mother, who incidentally was proposed as a possible bride for King Edward, the guy who abdicated. But the principle was established that let's steer clear of marrying foreigners. Wallis Simpson, of course, was a foreigner, but she had a really checkered past. She may have been a prostitute, I don't know. But back then you had a proper alibi, and Stanley Baldwin had stepped in and basically said, look, the head of the Anglican Church can't be married to a twice divorced lady of and at that time, this is the 1930s, you still had the notion that of a morganatic marriage. Some of the other princes and so on, they were contracting morganatic marriages at the time. A morganatic marriage means one where it's a marriage, but the wife is not, because she doesn't come from the blue-blooded, she isn't royal enough. So she doesn't gain any. I mean, she may get a territorial title, but she's not part of the of royalty, and her son or daughter can't inherit in the royal line. So anyway, the point I'm making is that is that the very notion of royalty, the very notion that blue blood, has some special status. And this very notion guards against what we may call vulgar racism, because you're discriminating against people who look exactly like you. It's just that their ancestor may not have been sitting on a throne. They may have been sitting on on something less worthy. The point I now want to make is that the British royal family, the firm as it's called, that it is subject, it is actually accountable. There is a false view that it's not accountable, that the Queen can do no wrong. That's not the case. The fact is that everything that is done by the firm, by the institution of the monarchy, it is perfectly and fully accountable. There is no exception for it. Sovereign immunity applies only to the Crown in Parliament, but even that sovereign immunity is diluted by the force of international treaties, as well as things like fundamental rights, the notion of fundamental rights. And so currently in Britain there is no such doctrine. This is not always the case, but currently there is no doctrine in law, and there is no case law to support the notion that, as Boris Johnson has said, that he as Prime Minister can say nothing about the royal family, and that he won't say anything. But this is false. This is false. He is waffling. He is telling a lie, or he is misrepresenting the truth. The fact of the matter is that it is settled in law that the Prime Minister has a duty to initiate conversations with whoever it may be, the sovereign, any member of the royal family, and certainly with the institution or the firm. That he has the right, but also the duty in the public interest to initiate conversations, to follow through on those conversations, and these conversations cannot be wholly private. A veil can be drawn over them only to the extent that the law regarding privacy and other, there are laws in this regard. Everybody is entitled to the same protection. But save as the law requires, otherwise the Prime Minister has a duty to make public, by addressing Parliament and informing Parliament of the substance of the conversations, why those conversations were initiated, how they were conducted, what was the import of the conversation, and what was the consequence. And this is a matter settled in law. The precedent is there. And if you look at Stanley Baldwin's speech to Parliament about the conversations he'd had, and he initiated those conversations, with Edward, and this is with respect to Wallace Simpson. And this is the obvious precedent. And there can be absolutely no doubt, firstly, that the accountability of the royal family, it hasn't declined. It is increased because of constitutional changes and international treaties. It is not the case, as has been argued. It has been argued that that the royal family have an exemption from certain legislations pertaining to equality and so forth. This is not true. An action can be brought under a more capacious source of authority or source of legal source, precisely because Britain has been signing up to all sorts of shit and enshrining it, and we've got a Supreme Court, and Lord Chancellor's gone, and we've been drunkenly, as a country, we've been drunkenly diluting the executive power, and we have, for virtue signaling reasons and out of sheer stupidity, and there are formidable, absolutely formidable legal obstacles to anything like the notion of good old-fashioned sovereign immunity. That's gone. It's a pipe dream. And it would require taking an axe to a lot of what constitutes what is now accepted as the British traditional jurisprudence. It would involve hacking at it to get away from the notion to provide a defense or a fire break. You'd have to get rid of all this to create a fire break between the firm, between the monarchy and laws which have which are based on treaties which have the force of international law. I'm not just talking about the EU. I'm talking about conditionalities under which we've made Brexit. But that's not the sole. That's not the only approach. The fact is that under international treaties, if the royal family is going to operate, the firm is going to operate outside Britain, save in a purely representative or a diplomatic function, then it's vulnerable. Then anywhere, the racism of the British royal family means that any action supported by them or which involves, where they are in concert with that action is vulnerable. In other words, in a third country, or a fourth, in a completely unrelated country, you could have a judgment. You could have a judgment on the basis of violation of fundamental human rights. And there's a human right not to be racially discriminated against or to be discriminated against on the basis of gender. And so actions in third or fourth, in any jurisdiction, through the thicket of the overlapping sort of treaties, international treaties. Uh, they make any project where it could be argued that the royal family, or any member of them, of the firm, where they have a role, then that project and that action is justiciable and is on these grounds. In other words, it is dragged into into another nexus. And of course, we know how the Americans have used these type of tactics, and these things are familiar. From sovereign debt and many other contexts. We know how that works. And it can be used against the firm, which after all is supposedly a money-making proposition, presumably for this country. So, but, as I say, the fact is, there is no sovereign immunity. There is no exception for the firm in practice. That argument fails. Now, it is noteworthy that Britain did change its rules. The royalty was based on primogeniture. The eldest male getting everything, and the heir gets everything, and the spare is told to fuck. But actually, the truth is, the spare wasn't told to fuck off. The reason primogeniture works so well is that the spare, the younger son, actually had marvelous opportunities, in the military or in as a governor of a province and so on. So, and they were allowed to shine. There's nothing wrong with the younger son winning battles and doing fantastic stuff. Whereas, of course, in Turkey or somewhere like that, a prince who's doing extremely well might be killed by the elder brother precisely because they didn't have primogeniture, because the law hadn't very firmly established that only the elder son inherits. But, yes, in France there was, I suppose, a competition between a cadet branch and the men branch. But that was unusual. That was because, in France something stupid happened. I'm sorry. Yes. So, I'm sorry, odd things are happening on my screen. So the bottom line here is that primogeniture works. There's nothing wrong with it, provided you let everybody shine to the best extent that they can, because that's good for the family. The succession is already fixed. So what if the younger brother outshines the older brother? Who cares? And the odd thing about the British royal family is it appears that the firm, they got upset if Princess Diana is outshining Prince Charles and the other dowdy frumps, and but Princess Diana had star quality. They should have allowed her to do as well as she could. I suppose you could say, but what if the suspicion is created that one of her children was, yeah, okay. But that's kind of stuff which a husband ought to be trying to do anyway. The Queen said, "Oh, this is annus horribilis." Rather, in 26 years later, same thing happens again, except it's her son. The victim of primogeniture, he and Meghan are more interesting, and they're also, they've given a good interview. to Oprah. It's an excellent interview. It's very well done, and we know that William, who's as boring as shit, good for him. It's good to be boring and to be balding, because I'm balding and I'm boring but I don't look like Prince William. But only because I look like Katie Middleton. Yes. You now know why I'm making this this video. It's because you've been thinking it as well, haven't you? You know, why Megan instead of me? It's because I'm really fucking racist, isn't it? Yeah. I could be a very beautiful queen. Or king. Yeah. As not sexist, mate. Yeah. I take either job.